Hello, Arizona, and welcome to this episode of Valley of the Sun Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Jayson Bates, the lender who lives in and is a part of your community. And as I say each and every podcast, if you would like to reach out to me or to the show, you can do so by visiting my webpage at www.valleyofthesunrealestateshow.com. From there, connect with me on any social media platform. I'd love to hear from you. And if you're checking this out on iTunes or you're listening to this on iTunes, please write that review, as it is one of the only ways that I have to help improve the show. So I really appreciate you taking time to do that. And in fact, I want to take this time right now to read one of the reviews that I have here. It is from Stephen Butala. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly there, Stephen. It says, fantastic podcast, informative, interesting, and entertaining. 5 stars. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day there, Stephen, to write that review. I really do appreciate that. So with that being said, let's get into today's topic. And this is something that's a little bit, how shall I say this? Something that I've kind of struggled with here a little bit. In that this topic being in a realtor and their knowledge of something, and then whether or not they continue to refer you, the consumer, out, giving their knowledge of the situation. And so what am I talking about here? Well, I'm talking about if a realtor knows when they refer you to a lender that lender charges a higher interest rate, does that realtor have a fiduciary responsibility in who they're referring you to? Now, I think, this is my own personal opinion, I think they do to some degree. Now, within reason, of course, there is this, how should we say, it's this gray area of what a lender is actually doing. When I guess not what they're doing necessarily, but if a lender is in the market or in the competitive range of interest rates, then I would say the lender or the realtor probably doesn't have a fiduciary responsibility. But if the lender is way out of whack, the lender's charging you a lot of points, maybe the interest rate is higher than normal, irregardless of your credit history, irregardless of your credit situation, unless you're doing a hard money loan or something like that, of course. But in the traditional sense of getting a mortgage, if a realtor refers you over to a lender that they know is not competitive or not as competitive as they could be, does the realtor hold some responsibility to that? This came up because I had a conversation here recently with a realtor who said, I really don't care. As long as the deal gets closed, that's all I care about. And, I thought to myself, that's just wrong. It becomes about them at that point rather than the consumer. And that to me is not in the spirit of who the realtor is to be representing. Are they representing their own self-interests, or are they representing your interests? And, at the end of the day, I did some polling and I did some polls to consumers, what was most important to them, the best service or the best interest rate. And overwhelmingly, it was the best interest rate. And at the end of the day, the interest rate is what affects your payment. It affects your affordability. It affects your happiness with the transaction. And what I mean by happiness is, you want to be happy with this loan not only today, but also tomorrow. You want to be confident that you got the best interest rate available. And so this is where this all kind of stemmed from, because it's been a struggle. A lot of lenders here say, hey, I provide the best service. I provide this, I provide that. Well, that's great. But if it costs the consumer thousands of dollars over the life of that loan, how important is that to the consumer? I think having the best interest rate or a very competitive interest rate, I'm not saying the best interest rate because we all need to make money, and I think everybody understands that. However, when lenders start to take advantage of that to the consumer and do things for realtors at the cost of the interest rate, I think that's where it gets to be a little bit of a gray area, and it can be a little troublesome for everyone involved. I know if I was a realtor, I would be pretty embarrassed if I were to refer one of my clients over to a realtor, and then that client came back and said, I appreciate the referral, and the person was great. However, their interest rate wasn't very good, and I found a better interest rate somewhere else. Now, to me, if I was a realtor, I would be embarrassed by that. Because if you read on Realtor.com, and I'm going to read this here for you. I'm going to pop this up. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, for all my podcast listeners out there, first of all, thank you for listening to the podcast. But I also try to do some videos. So check it out on my YouTube channel, The Jay Bates, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Share. But I'm going to pull up here. This is straight from the Realtor website, I think it was realtor.org. And it says, and I just typed in the question, what are the fiduciary responsibilities of a realtor? And it says here, reasonable care and diligence. An agent is obligated to use reasonable care and diligence in pursuing the principal's affairs. The standard of care expected of a real estate broker representing a seller or buyer is that of a competent real estate professional. By reason of his license, doesn't say his or her, but by reason of his license, a real estate broker is deemed to have skill and expertise in real estate matters superior to that of the average person. As an agent representing others in their real estate dealings, a broker or salesperson is under a duty to use his superior skill and knowledge while pursuing his principal's affairs. This duty includes an obligation to affirmatively discover facts relating to his principal's affairs that are reasonable and prudent real estate broker would be expected to investigate. Simply put, this is the same duty any professional, such as a doctor or lawyer, owes his patient or client. Now, with that statement, I think that's a pretty powerful statement, and that statement kind of leads me to believe. Sorry, I'm putting my other earphone in here. It came out. But that statement leads me to believe that there is a fiduciary responsibility to the agent to use their superior skills and knowledge to best represent you, the client. And so the question comes back again, if the realtor does not shop and make sure that you're getting a competitive rate, I'm not saying the best rate, but a competitive rate, then how responsible is that realtor? And this all comes back to what I've said many times. When you hire a realtor to represent you in a transaction, you kind of look to them for guidance. You do look for them for guidance. And you have to ask them certain questions. You have to get into their mindset. How professional are they? How much knowledge do they actually have that you can actually utilize and leverage to your benefit? Will they represent you fairly? These are all questions that you should be asking your realtor, and through a interview process, determine whether or not this realtor is going to be working out best for you. Now, early in my career, just to give you a little backstory on this, early in my career, I didn't care. I didn't care about the interest rate. I didn't care about some of those things. I cared about Jayson Bates. I cared about, what does it mean for me? The consumer, I'll sell the interest rate. And you commonly hear that from a lot of loan officers here. I'll sell the interest rate. Don't worry about the interest rate. As long as I get this, and that, I'm good. And for loan officers, it's a lot of marketing dollars. It's a lot of other things. Well, that all costs money. And that all translates into the interest rate. And interest rate to the consumer, they don't care about your marketing dollar. Who cares about my marketing dollar? If I'm providing the best interest rate, that's what's important to the consumer. And so I think our industry has lost a little bit of that focus. And I understand there's a definite balance between providing the best service, because I've had realtors tell me too, look, Jayson, you could have the best interest rate in time, but best interest rate in the world, but if you can't close a deal on time, what good is it? And I agree with that. Service does play a vital role in what we do. We are in a service-oriented business. I totally get that. But for the consumer, if a realtor refers you over to a lender that has a higher interest rate or maybe higher fees, maybe their fees are higher when it comes to their mortgage process. Is that good? Is that bad? I think, if I was a consumer, I'd be upset. I'd be pissed actually if a realtor referred me over to somebody and they had knowledge that, now proving that knowledge, I get you're not gonna be able to prove that knowledge that this realtor had this knowledge. But if I found out that they were referring a few different people and one was better than the other, what are you doing referring me to this other person who has higher fees or higher interest rate? I'd be pissed. Because then I would feel like they're not representing me in the way that I would want to be represented. And so I've spoken to realtors, some high profile realtors here, and to their credit, they say, hey, look, it's not my responsibility to shop the loan for them. Yeah, I get that. I 100% get that. That's not what this conversation is about. It's about knowing whether or not the realtor is representing the consumer fairly. So I'd like to think that realtors have their clients' best interest in mind when they're representing them, but the fact of the matter is, a lot of realtors do not. And this is why it's so vitally important that you, as a consumer, really educate yourself on what's out there, because it will cost you thousands of dollars if you do not. I know there are quite a few realtors here in the Valley who have special relationships with their lenders. I have special relationships with realtors. But I make it my duty to always shop myself to make sure that my rates are competitive, very competitive, some of the best in the Valley. And I kind of pride myself on that. Am I the best interest rate out there? No, I'm not. Am I the worst? Not by a long shot. I'm closer to the best than I am the worst. And so I'm very competitive when it comes to the consumer's interest. And I say that not because interest rates can vary. I get that. And I'm very competitive on fees, very competitive on the whole aspect, the service aspect of it, the knowledge of what's out there, very, very competitive on there. But I've run across some realtors here as of late who are using lenders who I know are not competitive, but they are very loyal to those lenders. And so by them referring their clients to those lenders, knowing that those lenders are overcharging their borrowers, I struggle with that. I really do struggle with that. And realtors say, hey, look, it's not my problem. I'm just referring it out, and the buyer's free to shop and get the best deal for them. And quite frankly, the loan estimate that's sent out and kind of encourages the consumer to shop to get the best deal. But I always come back to, it's kind of like you looking up to somebody. We look up to the president of the United States. If you were to meet the president face to face, it would be have a powerful impact at least on me it would. And some people would argue depending on the president, right? But if you met somebody that was very influential that you really looked up to for knowledge or whatever it is that interests you, you're going to kind of take their word and as gossip, or not gossip, but you're going to take that as fact. And so if a realtor is referring you to somebody, whether that be a title company, I'm not picking on loan officers, I'm not picking on lending companies, I'm certainly not picking on realtors. But whoever they refer you to, you kind of look to that as a trusted resource. And in which case then a lot of times you don't shop that, you don't question that, you don't second guess that, because you look to that realtor as the professional, as the somebody who has superior knowledge that you don't have. And so you trust it. And so, the purpose of this podcast is just to tell everyone out there, don't always trust your realtor. Do shop. I encourage people to shop me. Shop my rates. Shop whatever you'd like to shop. There are things that do play into it. And for example, typically the best interest rates out there aren't always the best service, and it can cost you thousands of dollars if you don't close on time. So it's a total package deal. that has to take place. But if I were a consumer and a realtor sent me out to somebody and I had a higher interest rate, or I found out that I was being charged a higher interest rate or higher in costs, and that's for the title company, that's for the lender, even for a home inspector. If a home inspector was charging me more than what I could get on my own, I would be upset. I would definitely be upset as a consumer. I don't know if you feel that way, but I certainly would feel that way. And for realtors, I mean, if I shopped a realtor and somebody says, okay, well, I'm going to charge 3% in commissions, and I found somebody who's going to do it for 2%, I might look at somebody for 2%, because at the end of the day, it's about the cost. It's about me. It's about the consumer. And that's what this podcast is about. It's about the consumer. I tried to make this podcast all about you, the consumer, educating yourself, or being a resource for you as a consumer to better educate you as to what's out there and what's happening. So, again, my take on this whole thing, I think that a realtor should be a little more of an expert in what's out there as far as loans go. A lot of realtors don't pay attention to that. I think they should. And if they're referring clients out, they absolutely should be very familiar with the programs that are out there, with what the rates are doing. They don't have to be an expert in the rates, of course, but they should be knowledgeable about it. And if you're dealing with a realtor who's not knowledgeable about it, some realtors say, I don't care, this is the guy I trust, use this person. Not saying that's a bad thing, because they could use somebody very, very competent. But do your homework as a consumer and research yourself so that you get the best deal. Because at the end of the day, when you close on that loan or you refinance or whatever it may be, you're the one that's actually paying for that. So with that, I would say, do your homework. Don't always rely on somebody you may think is a professional, and they probably are. But again, it's about you, the consumer, not about the realtor. So hopefully I gave you some additional things to think about when shopping for a home loan out there. Hope I did. Just something that was kind of bugging me a little bit. Thought I'd share it with everybody here on the podcast. Thank you, by the way, for taking time out of your day to listen to this podcast over all the other podcasts that are out there, because I know there are so many of them. Again, I hope to bring to you the information that you really can use. This isn't a podcast about how to get rich. This is a podcast about educating you and giving the power, the tools necessary for you to empower you to make the best decision for you and your family when it comes to your real estate needs. And certainly if you're looking to purchase or refinance a home here in the state of Arizona, I certainly would love to help you out. You can reach out to me by visiting my website, www.valleyofthesunrealestateshow.com. From there, connect with me any way that you see fit. And if you're listening to this on iTunes, please write that review, as it is one of the only ways that I have to help improve the show. So thank you for doing that. So until next time, I hope to see you out there shopping for a home soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. Jayson Bates, nmls 220798, mortgage banking license 1796, equal credit opportunity lender. Sound effects provided by soundj.com.